if I'm, say 25 or 24, 25 years old, and I've got a college education, maybe I'm married now, maybe I have my first child, I'm interested in law enforcement. But if I join the highway patrol, I have no idea where I'm going to be assigned. I have no idea where I'm going to be working. That can be hard.
Brothers and sisters, brothers and sisters, I don't know what this world is coming to.
You're listening to the Black and Blue Podcast, a discussion and celebration of the roles of African Americans and other minorities in U.S. law enforcement. Your host on the Black and Blue Podcast is Dale Peters, a law enforcement professional with over 20 years experience in the business. Hop on board this Black and Blue train of interviews, current events, and pop culture conversations. So get ready. The Black and Blue Podcast is coming at you right now. What up, Black and Blue fam? Welcome to another fun-filled edition of the Black and Blue Podcast, where we celebrate diversity in U.S. law enforcement. Y'all know me. My name is Dale, and I'm the host. Thank you once again for joining me for another conversation situation. But before we get to that, let me ask you, please click those like, subscribe, and bell icons right down here on my YouTube channel. It's just a small click for you, but it goes a long way for helping this channel stay relevant. And if you listen to me on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to rate the Black and Blue Podcast 5 stars. And last but certainly not least, make sure you check me out on any one of my social media pages for even more content. You can find me everywhere at Black and Blue US. All right, now, so with that taken care of, let's get right to it. Today's guest helped lead one of the country's premier state law enforcement agencies. So Black and Blue fam, help me welcome to the show, retired California Highway Patrol Assistant Chief Jonni Redick. Morning or afternoon.
Morning, how are you? It's afternoon, but it could be morning somewhere.
Yeah, it's like they always say, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, right?
That's right.
That's right. How you doing? How's your day shaping up?
My day is going pretty well. I mean, it's 9/11, so it's a day of remembrance for many of us. And so, just trying to be self-aware that that's what the date is today. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I posted on my socials earlier, remembrance, and then some other pictures when I went back to New York. Me and the family went back to New York a few years ago. We went to the memorial, and that's a powerful place.
Yeah, very much. I mean, I think I immediately reflect back to where I was, the day of, and I think most of us do. So it's very visceral for all of us.
Yeah. I remember when 9/11 happened, I used to be a Fed, and I was in training at that time, beginner training over at FLETC in Georgia. And that happened. So we were on East Coast time, and, we had just started getting up and having chow in the chow hall. And then, all these news reports came out on the TV, and they locked down the base, and it was a wild time.
Yeah, same. Everybody didn't know really what was going to happen next, right? You could see what was happening, but you didn't know what was going to happen next, what those implications were. So we immediately went on 12-hour shifts, and we went to securing our state infrastructure because we didn't know, what type of attacks would happen across the country as well. And so it was just I don't know, it was just like one of those times that you just can't believe that this is happening. And then I've met several people who are actually, working in either NYPD or New York during the incident, and just hearing their experiences and their stories, and just very powerful, and just very emotional in that sense. So just being respectful that, today is a heavy day and a big day for all of us here in America.
Absolutely. So I mentioned there in the intro, looks like we got a little bit of feedback real quick. Maybe turn down your speaker there a little bit. But I mentioned there in the intro that you are retired from the California Highway Patrol as an assistant chief. How long have you been retired now?
This will be my 6th year.
Okay, so not that long.
Not that long, but I think I think about it and I'm like, man, time just went by fast.
Yeah, we talked about before we hit record here about how fast something can come up, a year and a half can come up on you. So yeah, I'm sure. How long did you do the CHP?
For me, I did 29 years. So,
Wow.
that's a long time. I could have went longer, of course. I think, it's still mandatory age for CHP is 60, but I felt like 29 years was good years, long years. And I felt pretty comfortable with where I was when I decided to retire. And I wanted to be mentally and physically healthy enough to be able to have life on the other side of the work so that, I wasn't um, affected too deeply when I moved into retirement because I'd seen too many stories like that. And so I just had to make a big decision to say, well done, time to go.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, we had a sergeant that retired from my agency maybe like 5 or 6 years. He had only been retired and he had just passed away. We just had a service for him,
Hmm.
and he wasn't that old. I think he retired at 50, so maybe he was like 55, 56 now.
Yeah, that,
So
that
you hear those
happens.
stories.
It does.
Yeah,
So, despite when it's time for us to go, it's important for us to live life while we're here and able to live it. I just realized I had put off so many things that I was waiting for retirement to do or be a part of. And I just would encourage people, don't do that. Live life now because nothing's guaranteed. I mean, you can go while you're still working and it doesn't have to be like on duty. It could be just random stuff, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's the human experience, really, is random things happen to people every day. And so don't take anything for granted. Live life
yeah,
out
yeah.
loud.
Absolutely. And we all take pride in working and being employed and all that sort of stuff as well. And good thing, at least for law enforcement here in California, is that we can retire at such a young age to get out and enjoy things after retirement. But yeah, sure, do those things while you're working too, because like you said, you never know.
Well, I mean, I just know so many people that save all their vacation time and they don't take their vacation time, and I'm like, yeah, you can, there's different benefits for having it, but don't forget that you need to use it. You need to have that mental health time away. You need to have that time with your families. It's that's what it's for. And you also have sick time. There's, they retire with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of sick time because there's this big pride on not taking any sick time. And it's like, okay, but if you're not well, or you could use that time to feel better or be better, that's what it's for. Because it makes you a better overall person, not just a better officer and all that, but it's a holistic concept. When we talk about self-care and wellness, use some of those benefits
Sure.
that you have.
Absolutely. Yep. That's what they're there for. So use them to your benefit. Makes you a well-rounded person.
Not all at the
All right.
same time because we know that there's staffing shortages. And so I don't want people to be like, oh, she said to take my time. Be respectful. I mean, because I hear those
Yeah.
conflicts too, that sometimes people don't respect the fact that you are working short staffed and people just want to have their time off and they're just going to take it because they're afforded it, right?
Sure.
Versus looking at staffing situations and how do I get my time but still be able to support and help our unit or help our teams or our agency or whatever.
Yeah. And we'll get into staffing shortages and the outlook and how those things affect us today in law enforcement. But as a assistant chief, what were your kind of responsibilities when you were with the CHP?
So for people that don't understand how California Highway Patrol is designed, it's there's 12,000, just under 12,000 employees for the entire department that cover the entire state of California. So, we have just under 39 million people in the state of California, and for us in the California Highway Patrol, we have eight, as some would say, nine field divisions that cover the entire state. We have a headquarters where all of our commissioners and our administration is staffed. And then we have these field divisions. And in field divisions, you oversee, several commands. And they could be commands from 22 or 20 people to commands of 200 people, depending on the size of the command. So, for example, If you're in Los Angeles or the Bay Area, kind of demographically and geographically in those areas, very diverse, and also densely populated. So you could have larger commands in there. Each division has a chief, and then they have a 2-star assistant chief, one or two of those, to help with, the thousands of employees that they have within each division. And so that's how it's kind of broken up throughout the state. We have a commissioner, we have a deputy commissioner, and then we have 2 assistant commissioners, one that oversees all the field, and then one that oversees kind of all of the headquarters and administrative processes. And so for me, as an assistant chief, I was an assistant chief in our Bay Area, which is San Francisco, Oakland Bay Area, but it encompasses everything. You know, there's a lot of commands that are encompassed in that area, all the way down to San Jose to Santa Rosa geographically, if you look at that. And then in Valley Division, which is our Sacramento. So Sacramento is Northern California, but it went all the way up to like Truckee and Tahoe. People are kind of familiar with that, all the way down to some of our central division commands. So that is where I retired out of, is in the Sacramento kind of region. Trying to keep it generic enough so people listening can kind of put those pieces together versus sounding too departmental.
Yeah. Right. And then you say you did 29 there. What kind of drew you to the highway patrol and all that since there?
Well, let's see. Nothing necessarily, like I had nobody in my family that was law enforcement. Nobody in my family was military. I was raised by a single mother, and my mother struggled with prescription drug addiction off and on, but she was a registered nurse. And so she was somebody who was of service, helping others, being, self-sacrificing and all this kind of stuff. And I would see her when she was in her good moments, being really strong and being, this leader. And I never really thought about any of that for myself. And so when I graduated high school, and I barely graduated high school, I went into a job where I was a typist clerk. And that's kind of back in the late 80s, what was kind of mostly the work for women back then was secretarial or admin. And I worked for Kern County Human Resources Department as a typist clerk for social workers. And I was 18, and I was taking a few units of college at the junior college, mostly around accounting and better typing and better administrative skills. But what I found is that while I was working with the social workers, I started seeing people that I went to school with coming through, to get assistance and aid. And they had already had, a couple of children. And, I started thinking about what else did I want to do, but I didn't necessarily see myself in an upward mobility pathway where I was. And so one day I'd been there a couple of years. I happened to be looking at a real newspaper, those paper newspapers. I was flipping through it, and I'm a comic
I remember
buff.
those.
I loved reading the comics. I loved reading the comics when I was coming up. And so I was reading the comics for the day, and across from that was a big ad for the California Highway Patrol. And it talked about the pay, and it talked about, the requirements to be eligible to apply. And it also talked about retirement. And so I didn't really know what any of that was, but I had grown up on Chips, the show. And so
Yeah.
I was like, okay, hang gliding, beach life. I'm living in Central Valley. It's hot. There's no surf anywhere around here. This could be kind of cool. So I applied at like 20 and a half. And because I had no background or anything that was significant that took a long time, I pretty much was in the academy in 6 months. And I had no clue what a paramilitary anything was. I'm sorry. I apologize for all those military people like, oh my God, how'd you let that happen? I had no concept of, Oh Dark 30 and marching and running and all of the stuff that came with it. But I think because I was an athlete, I played basketball in high school. that the rigor wasn't that hard as far as the physical rigor. It was more of the mental stamina needed to endure the yelling and the stress they place on you, and then trying to then navigate all these tasks that you had to do and stay awake to be able to go to classes. And then you're female and you're female of color, so you're like a small minority in this big group. So our class sizes were like 150, and there was probably 23 women at the time, and we came a week early before all the men reported. Women reported a week early, and in that first week, they took us out to the range to shoot the gun. They ran us a lot. They had us do things like watch how to change a tire on a car. um,
Yeah.
and did some other, officer safety techniques and stuff like that, and mostly yelled at us all the time. And several women did leave and go home. That it was, they just, weren't cut out for it. And then the men came a week later, and it went to repeat, and they just started yelling at everybody when everybody arrived. And so, so I wasn't necessarily drawn to policing. I think I was drawn to service. I
Yeah.
was drawn to how can I help others, not knowing really what policing called for. And so, when I think about, because I do a lot of work around talking to young people and, trying to encourage them to come into law enforcement. And that's one of the things that I would have loved to have been able to do different, was to know more about the job so that I could have been better prepared, because somehow I squeezed through. But people shouldn't have to squeeze through if they're properly prepared and they're better informed, like ride-alongs, going to those academies, opportunities, citizens academies, and spending time, and things like that are just more helpful. Plus, also, criminal justice degrees help you immensely. And I didn't have any of that. I didn't have a deep education. I didn't have a lot of exposure. And I didn't have any mentoring or anybody that came alongside of me. So I'm going to take a break there because that was a lot of talking.
Yeah, no worries. And you talked about trying to mentor young people into the profession, getting some knowledge and knowing what the profession's about so they can kind of think of that as a career. I know that's what a lot of Explorer programs are for. And I've seen the CHP has a big contingent of Explorer programs. How does the CHP kind of recruit explorers, for one? Because I know at a local agency, it's probably easy to go to the local high school. Sometimes you have an SRO in the high school. I was an SRO at one point, and you can kind of point them in that direction. But how does the CHP kind of do that?
Well, so that's, I think, a misperception too by a lot of people, to think that because the California Highway Patrol is on the highway, that they don't have any roots in any of the communities, and they do. So when you look at our commands that are throughout the state, they sit in cities. They sit in, the county pockets. And so this is where people either live and work around. You have that office just like you would have a municipal police department office there. They collaborate and work closely with, the sheriffs, the police department, all the other public safety partners. They go out to community engagement events. They have regular attendance at, different engagements. And they're just like a police department in the sense that um, you have all the same expectations and all the same responsibilities. So when you set up for example, an Explorer program, you're really pulling from the same community that, say, the local municipality would have. Um, the difference in the strength of your Explorer program is who's coordinating it, who's overseeing it, how's it being implemented, how are you keeping your young people engaged? Because they're going to schools and things and speaking about different traffic safety programs, peer programs, all those different things that affect young people, just like municipal agencies are. But what makes them want to come over to your particular Explorer program? And so the Highway Patrol does a really good job of in that skill building, not just skill building and awareness and knowledge for young people about policing, but just overall life. How to be good citizens, how they want to, start having a vision and a plan for their own life by going to, continuing through high school and going to college and those things, and then helping them to prepare if they do decide to choose to go into law enforcement and they choose California Highway Patrol, how to help them to be able to do that and be successful. So they have
Yeah.
competitions, so they compete on different skills. They compete against other allied agencies, so there's this sense of camaraderie, sense of achievement and accomplishment. And then you have this strong support system and new network for the young people that participate.
Yep. Yep. I remember when I was in SRO, we worked really closely with the CHP guys in my area for the every 15 minutes program. I don't know if you know
Mhm.
that program there, where they come
Yes.
to the local high school and they talk about the dangers and perils of drinking and driving, and we put on a big presentation with a mock trial, with a mock crash, and all this is really powerful, and the students get to see that, the whole school gets to see that, mostly the seniors, the juniors and the seniors that are going to the proms. But yeah, we worked really closely with them on that.
Yeah, I mean, traffic safety, if you look at the numbers, the based on the mileage death rate and those numbers, more deaths are occurring on the freeways, on all of our highways. And so, disproportionately, African Americans are affected differently than, white or Hispanic in some of these categories. And so I appreciate some of the work that I get to do working with Noble, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, in some of our initiatives that we work with some of our partners on creating, education and informing on how to create better awareness in our communities of color on how to be safe. And then also providing that opportunity for them to weigh in and give us feedback so that we can kind of pass that information forward with our partners that we work with, kind of at the federal level, to come up with different ways to approach traffic safety. So, you mentioned every 15-minute program. That is a tremendously important program, and it's highly emotional to be a part of that. And then you also have families that have been affected by having lost some of their, young people that will come and participate in those programs. So it's a very I'm glad you mentioned it. It's very powerful, and kids see it as kind of this cool moment to do, but it's very emotional, very powerful because it's very real. And I apologize because it just took me back to a few of my most horrendous traffic incidents and calls that I had to respond to, not only as an officer but as a sergeant for my staff that would have to respond to some of these with young teenagers, exactly like you said, on these prom nights, and their life is gone and their
Yep.
families are just devastated and crushed, and it's as a result of drinking and driving.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm glad you mentioned that what you used to do, as a sergeant and all those sorts of things. Kind of talk about your career, from when you graduated the academy. Kind of what did you do? Where'd you go? Kind of give us a sense of your career as a CHP officer.
Yeah, so I'm from Bakersfield, which is Central California, and the academy's in Sacramento. So that was the kind of first time being away from home. And then after you go through the academy for 6 months, you get to put in a dream sheet or a wish list for where you'd like to go in the state. And I happened to go to Southern California, so I went to a command in Ontario. Then I went over to Ventura, and then I ended up in the Bay Area in Hayward, and I spent quite a few years in Hayward. I got married, wanted to have a family, affordability. We moved to the Valley, so I ended up being in the Valley in Stockton for the majority of my officer years, and then I promoted to sergeant and went to San Jose. Oh, I take that back. I went to headquarters first and oversaw statewide programs there. And then I ended up promoting and going to San Jose as a lieutenant. And then I came back to Stockton as a lieutenant. I was a sergeant and a lieutenant in Stockton, working the field, working graveyards, working swing shift, working day shift, working whatever shift that you work, because you had to fill in where you had to fill in. And then as a captain, I was back in the Bay Area, And then as an assistant chief, like I said, I was in the Bay and then came back to kind of the Valley, where I then oversaw Stockton and 8 other commands.
Nice, nice. And then as a female, I know you mentioned all the trials that you had to go through in the academy. Did you kind of experience the same sort of thing when you made it out to the field?
Yeah, as an officer, I mean, I had, you know, family friendly show, I'm sure. I had those people
Hey,
that would
speak
not,
your mind. It's just us. It's just us. Speak your mind.
I would have those individuals that just refused to ride with women, call us every name in the book. And this was in briefing. This is not like
Wow.
sidebar and they're calling you these things and you're just experiencing it. This is like in briefing and the sergeants are up front and never say anything, just allow it to happen. And they would go home sick. Like if the sergeant was gonna like make them ride with you, they just go home sick, and it'd be like, okay, like no big deal. And then they'd make us women sometimes ride 3 to a car because nobody wanted to ride with us. So we would just have fun with it. I mean, we had pretty thick skin. Our mouths were just as bad as theirs were, and we let them know how we felt, and then we just go out and do the work. And I remember graveyards in Hayward, and I had a partner that, man, we made it our absolute mission to go out and try to beat everybody else on how many deuces we were going to hook for the month. And man, we were like either 1 or 2 every single
And
month, and
and
gave people
deuces,
nothing to say.
real quick, deuces for the general audience, that would be
DUIs, people
DUI.
who've been drinking and driving. And these weren't people that were like barely, over an O8. These are people that were smashed. They were out there just high blood alcohol levels. And we would just hook and book all night long, and we'd be done probably about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. We'd have 4. Some good nights we'd have 4. Most nights we'd have 2 or 3. But that was our job, because we felt like our job was to go out there and make the road safe. That's what had been pounded into us. That was what we would do. So when you're out there and you have speeders going 90 or 100 miles an hour, we're like, okay, they're either just straight speeding or possibly they're going to be DUI, because we work graveyards. So most of the time, those were our stops, stopping them for speed, and they were usually DUI. Stopping them for weaving back then, they were either sleepy or DUI. Today, it's distracted driving. So that gets really confusing when you're trying to see if somebody's impaired or not. But back then, it was pretty cut and dry most of the time. I mean, we had our share of tussles and fisticuffs and stuff like that, but men didn't come to our calls. We pretty much handled our calls together. And I would say it wasn't until several years, it's almost like you had to prove yourself a lot longer than you wanted to. Like our younger generation that was around our age were more helpful. But when we came in and we had like an older generation of males, they just didn't want to have anything to do with you. They just wanted to really act like, why are you here, for one? And then they just couldn't wrap their mind around helping you at all. And so it didn't take until I got into the Stockton Command, and I had to respond to quite a few things on my own. Overturn big rigs, cars all over the road, like the whole thing, like you see in a movie, everything shut down, and it would be my scene. And people would roll by and be like, "You got this," and then keep on going, versus get out and help you. And it took a
Yeah.
while before like a few of the senior officers started to say, man, she can hold her own, she can do her own work. And they invited me to a choir practice to have a soda after work. So I'm a non-drinker. I debated on, was I going to say yes or no, but I knew it was a make or break point. And so I said yes, and literally had a soda. But it was that opportunity for them to kind of get to know me more personally, and for me to not be so armored up against them all the time, because I was just like, man, they just, you create this us versus them versus us. It's us, but we're us versus them. And it was just a big defining moment. And to this day, I credit my growth and becoming a better officer because of those senior officers once they let me in, because they were working twice as hard as I was working out in the Valley, twice as hard as I'd ever thought about working in the Bay Area. These people were working hard.
Yeah. Did any of them ever, talk to you about, their decisions to kind of shut you out in the beginning and why they did that?
They never talked about it like in a male female thing, other than to say, you're the third or fourth female that we've had in the office. And so it made sense in that vein, because if you have an office of, 100 people and you're the third or fourth woman that they've ever had work in this particular command, it's an experience for you. And if you've never had to work around women, that's an experience for you. In this command in Stockton, in Hayward, they were a little more hateful, a little more mean about it. But when I came to Stockton, they were a little bit more family, because it's a different type of environment than when you're working in the Hayward, kind of the metropolitan kind of thing. People are transient in and out of the commands, transferring all the time. When you move into the Valley, people kind of stay in that command longer. So there have been people that were there longer. So it was really about, can you come in and do the job? And if so, we're going to just, treat you, like everybody else to a degree. I was still a woman, right? But yeah, I remember when I left on my first promotion, one of the older gentlemen gave me like a really small little card, and the card said, "You always know how to find your way back home," and that's Stockton. And I carried that in my pocket for a really long time, because having his approval, I think approval is not the right word. I don't know what word I'm looking for, but his acknowledgement.
Acceptance?
Yeah, that's good. His acceptance allowed other people to lean in and say it was okay too, because he was like a senior leader in the office. And so, yeah.
Nice. And then that was kind of like the early 90s. Had you seen things kind of change up until the point to where you retired in that regard?
Yeah, I would say things change for me. And I'm going to keep that kind of specific and tight for a reason, and then I can kind of branch out from there. But for me, as I moved up in my promotions, male subordinates didn't treat me like they used to treat me, because now I'm their boss, right? So that changed. But I will say moving into my peer groups was a little different, because, for example, being an officer, going to a sergeant, and coming back to supervise people who had an issue with me as a female, and working with the sergeants who had an issue with me as a female, and now I'm their peer, was quite fun. And then when I promoted again to lieutenant and oversaw them, was even more fun. And fun because they struggled with it for a while, but for me, I didn't hold any kind of animosity or grudges and stuff. But it's kind of those things where they were uncomfortable. One was like, "I'm going to retire," and I was like, "That's about time anyway."
Yep.
um,
Time to go.
but overall, in the department and the organization, it's just a reality. Women are a minority. I mean, for the CHP, I think women are less than 7% out of the 7,500 sworn positions that there are. And when you look at leadership, there's not very many women in high ranking positions, because there's just not very many women. And, I believe leadership has the heart to want to create the diversity that's needed. It just has to constantly be on your front burner. It can't be the flavor of the month, or somebody thinks about it today and forgets about it tomorrow. You have to create that within your organizational culture. You have to recreate, how you're recruiting and marketing, not just this big conceptual stuff, but really, how are you engaging people to have those really good conversations and bring them in through the process? And so it's a reality that all law enforcement is facing. Well, I'm not going to say all, because there's some agencies that they've got 20% or 30%, because they have some great strategies, but majority are struggling with staffing, period. And then when you talk about diversifying that staff, it becomes even more complex. So
Yep.
It's hard for women for a lot of reasons in my mind, that if I look around and I don't see other me's, and I don't have that good allyship from my male counterparts, then you can feel very alone. It can feel very hard for you to navigate the space, because we know that it's emotionally stressful, it's physically stressful. And if you don't have that community of support that you need, it can be very difficult and challenging. And it can be
Yep.
difficult when you have um, white males who are choosing other white males for special assignments, for promotions, and you're wondering, well, why? What happened? Why not me? And some of it could very well be that maybe you didn't perform well in the exam process. But a lot of times, even I found that they pick who they want to pick. That's all I can say is you can all make the list, but the person gets to pick who they want to pick. And when I learned those politics, I started trying to mentor and help others to understand the politics. The exam process, yes, how to prepare and how to get on that list. It's what I do. It's what I've done for decades. It's what I still do. But you have to be prepared for the politics of once you get on the list and you don't get picked, and then you don't get picked again. How do you navigate that, and what do you do? And I've had conversations with some people where you have to decide, is that the agency you want to stay at? Because there's agencies that will pick you up in a heartbeat, if you're the right candidate, and move you right over into, say you want to be a sergeant, they'll move you into a sergeant position. If you're a lieutenant and your agency doesn't have any room for you, but you're on that list, especially depending on municipalities and how that works, and they go outward for looking for candidates, put in, because you'd be surprised. They may pick you up. Just because your agency doesn't mean you have to stay there for life and just have to keep suffering that same kind of loss and defeat and feel like, it's you. Some of it can be you, so don't forget to have some self-reflection, but some of it, they're going to pick who they want to pick. It just is what it is. And that's how
Yeah.
the exam process is designed. So you can't have a lawsuit per se, because it's a rule of three or rule of two, or however the chief have and HR has designed the process.
Right. Right. I know for a time, I don't know if it was the last commissioner or the commissioner before that, that was female, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's a 30 by 30 initiative. Do you know how the agency's kind of moving forward with that? Are the numbers kind of changing? Yeah, I know we're all having a hard time getting people in the door, period. But as far as trying to increase the numbers of females in the ranks, how do you think that's going?
I really like I really like all of our commissioners that we've had. I've come up in the organization with them, right? So you know their hearts, you know their intentions. It's just very difficult, and I'm going to use the California Highway Patrol specifically as an example. It's a state agency. It is collectively how many communities, how many citizens, these variations, all these different factors. So if I look at, say, the city of Stockton, and they're looking to recruit people into their community, you know what you're going to be getting in that community, in that agency per se, in that community. But for the CHP, when they do recruitment, it is recruitment that's statewide recruitment efforts. And so you'll get people from all over the country, internationally, who might be interested in the Highway Patrol. And the potential is you're going to work in any particular community throughout the state. So that's very hard when you're talking about women who are looking for a policing job. That if I'm, say 25 or 24, 25 years old, and I've got a college education, maybe I'm married now, maybe I have my first child, I'm interested in law enforcement. But if I join the Highway Patrol, I have no idea where I'm going to be assigned. I have no idea where I'm going to be working. That can be hard. Plus, I got to go to an academy that's live-in for 6 months. So there's a lot of those factors that influence and affect women choosing the CHP in a large state agency. And so I know that there's been a lot of different task force and, work around how can they change some of the processes, the exam system, how people can come and do take the exam in 3 days, all the different components, trying to reduce that time, trying to reduce the amount of time it takes for a background, trying to look at how bifurcating the academy on when they come in and what post-required classes they take up front-loaded per se, and then, how do we give them agency-specific training? But all of those things, the reality is we're people, right? So it's hard for a woman to make that decision necessarily and have to decide, how do I leave my family for 6 months? And then how do we know where we're going 6 months from there? So I just say it's a very difficult challenge. We have always been low. I was in recruitment for several years, oversaw statewide recruitment, and the numbers are not much different from 20 years ago, 15 years ago. It's just kind of the state of where we are. Doesn't mean that they're not trying. It's complex. It's a lot of municipal agencies in one big state agency. And, how do you get people, women and people of color, to be like, I want to go do this? So we do a lot of military recruiting. So we get a lot of military recruits, right? All of our police agencies do, actually. So
Yep.
I don't know if that answered your question, but it's just
Yeah.
a very complex, hard, difficult thing when you look at a large state agency, and the size of this state is enormous.
Right. I know you mentioned it's kind of tough for people to, or women in particular, to determine whether or not they want to work for the CHP because of, they've got to leave for 6 months and then they don't know where they're going to go after that. Is part of, your career growth in the CHP, is it mobility? Are you required to move every now and then, or once you get to a field office,
No.
can you stay there forever?
Yeah, once you get to one office, you can stay there forever. That is absolutely your choice. I did not, simply because I liked having the ability to change it up every 2 to 3 years. And then when you promote, you go back into the same cycle. So it's only very rare that you get to promote right where you're at. Most of the time, if you're going to take a promotion, you're going to be leaving the command you're in, and you're going to be having to make a decision if you're going to, if I'm in Stockton, which is Central Valley, am I going to go to Oakland? Am I going to take the job in Oakland? Am I going to take the job in San Diego? And that's all based on, kind of where you are on the list, and when your time comes up and the offer, are you going to take the offer, or are you going to pass? And you can pass so many times until the list expires, right? So you're making these decisions all the time, and what's going to be best for your family, or what's going to affect them least. And so for me, on my promotions, I chose to pick places that I could commute to. So my family never had to move, because I had 2 young children. My husband at the time was with the local police department, and nobody had to move. The only person that had to be mobile was me. But we know that commuting creates stress and strain and fatigue and all of that. When you make those decisions, those are hard too.
Yep. Those are some of those moves can happen, like, when your kids are young, but especially when they get into high school, it's a little bit tougher. Maybe even middle school. So those are decisions that you got to think about. Is kind of moving to promote, is that kind of expected? I know you said you can pass on a list 1 or 2 times, but after that, hey, if you don't want it, then we're not going to offer it to you again, right?
Well, for us, the way maybe the other agencies work different, but ours are all the way until whatever the list date expiration is. So, let's just use a small number. Let's say there's 10 of us on the list. The offer is maybe one command, and they're going to go to the first 3 people, on the list. First person passes, second person passes, third person passes. Well, they can go into the next ranks, because they're all ranks in the list, until somebody picks up. And then when the next offer comes out, they start at the top again, and you go down. And so, some people know how to uh, use that system well, and then others, lose out on getting a job if they
Yeah.
want to promote. So you have to be really careful. But some of those processes have changed. The way you used to get on a list looks way differently than how you get on a promotional list now, and how long the list lasts has definitely changed, because people would use that system, right? And commissioners and chiefs and different divisions, they want the best of the best. They don't want people who are, trying to game the system. But it's also not gaming. and I hope they realize that people are just trying to make good quality of life decisions that's best for their families and best for them.
Yes.
Not that they don't want to promote, but I don't want to have to promote and possibly jeopardize the quality of my life with my family and my mental health in order to make this thing work. All for what? Increased pay, which sure, we all want to get paid more, but man, I don't know if I want to pay that high of a price.
Right, right. And in some of those areas, are the pay commensurate to where you are? I mean, if you go from say, Stockton or
It's the
Bakersfield
same.
up to
It's
the
the same.
Bay.
The same.
So
Same pay.
wow, wow. So your cost of living is going to be a lot higher in San Francisco than it is in Bakersfield.
Absolutely. So you have to make that decision like, okay, but after they do a year or so, they can start to put in for a transfer. Then it's based on seniority. So depending on where you go, it could be several months, it could be several years, because it might be a hard place to get to because of seniority. So they don't have to go even on a promotion and stay there forever. They can put in to transfer to go somewhere else. And again, we have over 100 plus commands throughout the state of California, including headquarters commands.
Yeah, nice. And then, getting back to, the actual job duties of a CHP officer, I know we talked about earlier, there's more than just, regulating the laws, the highway laws on the highways. And we talked about, collaborating with the, schools and local agencies as well. A lot of people don't know some of the other duties and assignments that can happen. I know now with all the retail thefts going on, that the CHP's in charge of those task forces, at least out here in Southern California. What other sorts of things are there? I know you talked about chips earlier. They had hang gliders and stuff like that on the show. We were like, come on now, when the chippies doing that? But what other sort of things are the CHP officers able to do in their career?
Yeah, those were I love chips, man. It was so cool. Yeah, but they have their operations. So, you think about a lot of people may think about air operations as, being overhead, looking for suspects, following pursuits, but they also do a lot of air rescues. So for us in our Valley Division, our air operations did a lot of air rescues, in the Tahoe, Truckee kind of regions and areas of that. So, those are things that we do. Also, commercial vehicle inspections are significant for the Highway Patrol. That whole regulating and making sure they're in compliance is one of the, you know, I think scary parts, and also one of the most important parts, because those are very big vehicles traveling on the freeway. I'm trying to keep it just as simple as possible, but very big vehicles traveling on the freeway. So, and making sure that everything is in compliance and inspecting those commercial vehicles. Highway Patrol has a lot to do with legislative changes and things that impact us, not only in California, but in the whole traffic safety industry for the country. So they're part of a lot of committees and a lot of projects with the National Highway Transportation and Safety Administration relative to those conversations that impact everybody's traffic safety policies and procedures. But we also have investigations. They investigate not only things like retail theft, having a task force, but also having to do with cyber crimes, helping other state agencies with investigations that they have. Of course, we have SWAT, like other municipal agencies have. We have, when I think about some of the things that we've gotten involved in over the last probably 10 or 15 years, we operate like a very large state, like municipal type agency, in the sense of we do a lot of the similar things. We just don't have one community that the CHP does it in, because we become an extension sometimes of the governor on what those needs are. So, for example, if you have places like um, at one time it was Stockton, but not right now currently. But I can't remember if it's Vallejo or where they have low staffing and they need mutual aid and assistance from law enforcement. CHP often will go into MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding, and help those particular cities with policing. How that's defined is very clear on what, say, the police agency will do, but what the CHP will do. But we come in and support and augment those services because they don't have enough. And we've done that for years. And so CHP is like that utility police department on the state's belt to call in to help with all kinds of things, like this sideshow racing, street racing that's happening all across
Oh yeah.
our state. Highway patrols, you know, um, part of those task force with all those different municipal agencies all across the state. But our entity is still the CHP, right? Even though we're working with different cities. So um, it's just so many different things that the Highway Patrol does, and it's very interesting for people who might be interested in law enforcement to take a closer look, because it's not just out there, writing tickets to reduce fatal and injury collisions and change driving behavior and respond to collisions on the freeway and help pedestrians that are stranded. It's very complex. The community engagement work that CHP does to build public trust has significantly changed over, the last probably decade and a half, on how they get involved and how they're embedding themselves more in the community, because the community needs that, and we need more partners out there to be able to affect change. Right? Everybody wants to have
Yep.
this quality of life that we can all feel safe, and we can also know that things are being addressed. And sometimes one agency cannot do that. They need the support of their partnerships. And I think that collaboration is really important.
All right. All right. And I know that you rose through the ranks of the CHP, and then you finally called it a career. What are you up to nowadays?
Well, let's see. I love the academic side of my learning in the last probably since probably 10 years. And so I'm a professor at the University of San Diego, and I am part of the LEPSL program. So it's the Law Enforcement Public Safety Leadership Program, and it's a graduate program for public safety and law enforcement professionals. So I get to teach for that online. It'd be nice if I was there in San Diego. But I do go to the graduations, and so I get to work with executives all across our nation. And every now and then we'll have an international student or so. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I teach over at our junior college here for cadets who are come into our administration of justice, but they're in the cadet program to become a police officer. And so I teach a cultural immersion project where we talk about community engagement and understanding different cultures that they are experiencing, and how to be able to be a little bit vulnerable in the conversations that we have, so that we can get past some assumptions and stereotypes, and we look at the history of law enforcement and policing in particular communities. And so I enjoy doing that. And then I do a little bit of consultant work, and I'm an author of a couple of books, and I am a grandmother of two. And so I
Ooh.
enjoy spending time with my husband, my kids, my grandkids. And so when I was talking to you earlier, I told you that grandkids will change your thinking and your heart on what you think you know. So,
Yeah, yeah. And I told you, hopefully not anytime soon.
well, yeah, if yours are too young, you got plenty of time. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. So you're still busy, really busy. Sounds like.
I am. I feel like we should continue to contribute, until such a time that we cannot.
Yeah,
So I still believe in being of service.
yeah, yeah. And you talked about your family. What did your family kind of think? I know you said your husband at the time was in law enforcement, and you're in law enforcement. So both of you guys are in law enforcement. What did the families think about you being in law enforcement, especially being a mom?
Well, so when I came on, I was none of those things. I was joint policing when I was not, no children, no husband. Again, single parent mom who was like, you can do anything you want to do. You're capable of doing it. So she believed in me to be able to do it. And so I did. When I got married, he was not in law enforcement, and he eventually ended up being in law enforcement. But I said he was. I keep using was, so we are one of those statistics. We were married for like 18 years. We had 2 beautiful children. And so, but it was, the relationship was strained. It was hard. It was difficult. And as you see, I was promoting. So that required different things from both of us. And so, I would just tell people to have those conversations with your family and your significant others on what are the expectations of one another. Because, you feel like you're supported and then you're not supported, or are you supported? But if you're not communicating, you don't know, and you don't know how to be able to navigate those decisions. On top of other nuances and factors that happen in a relationship, the work part can be very significant for you, especially for us in public safety and law enforcement. My children, they think mom's cool. They thought she was like, okay. They were like, but I will say when it was time for me to retire. So my son is 31, my daughter is 26. And it was 6 years ago, again, that I decided to retire. And I will say that my daughter was absolutely more than relieved, because she had seen how the stress and the pressure of my position was just really hard on me. It was long days, long hours. So when we're dealing with, all the fires we had in Northern California, those aren't 12-hour shifts. Those are 24-hour, 36-hour, 48-hour shifts, and you're dealing with hundreds of staff that are out there on different shifts and all the different stakeholders when you're in these unified commands and working through mutual aid. And those were some tough, that last couple of years were tough with all those fires and all the disasters we'd had in different ways, and also a lot of loss of life. We'd had several line of duty deaths. We'd had several suicides, several significantly hurt, injured, and sick. And when you're a chief, you carry the weight of all of those things, but you keep functioning. But at home, your family and your children see all that. And so when I told her I was, I'm done. I've made the decision. She cried and I cried, because she was like, Mom, you've done a good job. Well done. It's time. And I still get emotional when I think about it, because she's right. I think we feel like we got to keep, doing this thing. And if we've done our job well, that means we have brought other people up behind us that will continue to do the job well. And it's okay for us to go ahead and do something different. And it's okay. Because I talked to a couple of my peers that I ran across, not in my agency, but other agencies. And I couldn't, they were like, how did you have the courage to retire? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, I want to retire, but I'm a little bit afraid. And I was like, don't be afraid. I said, because I had ran into them after I'd been retired a couple of months. I said, don't be afraid. It really feels good. I said, when you saw me and you said, man, you look really good. I said, because all the weight was lifted. All of it was just lifted. The stress, the caring, everybody's everything. And all the expectations on who you think you need to be and how you need to do it, they're gone. And he goes, I hear you. It's just my identity. So I just would say, if you are thinking about retiring and getting close to it, really utilize your resources that you have, and maybe start talking about it with somebody like a therapist, or, somebody that can help you navigate feeling no fear, feeling like, man, it is really the next step that's natural and it's okay to take. Because we get all this information and education on our finances, right? How we're going to get paid, when we're going to get paid, what's the percentage we're going to get paid. We get that down to a T, but we don't get the emotional and wellness aspect of retirement, because you do fall off an abyss of engagement and interaction with people. People that say they're going to call and check on you and let's do this and let's do that. It lasts maybe a month or two, and then you just don't hear from people anymore. So you can significantly go through, a mental health shift if you don't have yourself anchored in other stuff. You can only travel so much. You can only have small drinks with umbrellas so much. You can only sleep in so much, watch TV shows so much.
Yep.
And at some point, you're going to be facing yourself a lot more than you did before. And sometimes when you have a spouse, you can spend too much time with each other when you didn't before. All of these things. So just, really think about, what you want that to look like, and do you want a second career? And don't jump into it right away. Make sure it's something you want to do. And then if you don't like it, don't feel like you're obligated to keep doing it. Don't, but find the right thing that's a good fit for you.
Right. Good words to live by. All right, Chief. Hey, I appreciate you coming on and telling us all this sort of stuff about, wellness and keeping your family and your mental health alive and all that sort of stuff. But hey, like I said, you are not done. I told you in the beginning of the the program that we can add a little trivia here for you. So let me get this set up here for you before
I know,
I
and
let
I
you
told you I'm
go.
gonna do the best I can.
You'll do fine. Let's get you started here, and here we go.
Black or blue, 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 black or blue.
All right, Chief, this is my black or blue game, and your category today is TSMCA. I know you have no idea what that means, but CHP being abbreviation for California Highway Patrol. So we're going to talk about abbreviations, specifically text and social media conversation abbreviations. You got kids and you got grandkids, and I know you know the LOLs and all that sort of stuff. So
let's see. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you're a college professor, so you deal with the. Yeah, so
yeah, I'm gonna do the best I can. Some of these new emojis, though, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. We'll get you through, Chief. Don't worry about that. So here's your first one here. SMH. What's that?
Shaking my head.
Shaking my head. That is correct. Yeah, shaking my head. See, you knew that one. How about your next one here? How about OMW?
OMW. Oh my.
Let's say someone's asking you, when you coming?
On my way.
On my way. On my way, yeah. All right, so I told you we'll get you through this. How about I'm so thinking of the phonetically. So IYKYK. I was gonna say yellow, but
I've not seen that one.
I know you say it all the time, though.
Why aren't you gonna give me a hint?
At it. Yeah, the first word is if.
If you know yo.
You got it. If you know, yes.
Okay. If you know, I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, if you know, Yep, you know that. How about TBH?
TBH. To be heard, to be had, to be. Throwback.
To be honest.
To be honest, okay. Nobody's ever trying to be honest with me, but okay. To be honest.
Well, in a saying, in a conversation, to be honest.
To be honest,
I really don't want to go. Yeah. To be honest, I really don't.
That.
I'm really not feeling that.
I'm gonna use that with my daughter today. To be honest, I do not want to hear that.
Yeah, exactly. How about JK? You know that one.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
That's for her. She's listening to that. To the last thing I said. Just kidding.
Just kidding. How about HMU? Kind of talking about if
help me understand.
No, you want somebody to contact you later.
Hit me up.
Yep. Hit me up, yeah. See, we get through this bae. I know you heard the term, but you know what it means.
It literally means bae.
It literally means bae, but it kind of means something else too. It means I'll give you that one though. That was before anyone else is your bae.
Oh, okay, but yeah, bae literally means your bae. Okay.
Literally. Couple more here for you. How about WYD?
What?
You asking
what? What you doing?
What you doing? Yep. What you doing?
What you doing?
Yeah, what you doing? ICYMI.
ICYMI.
Yeah.
I can.
First word is N.
Yep, that's not helping.
Yeah, there you go. Go back.
Okay, I wasn't gonna get that.
You got it though. In case you missed it.
Yeah, I was not gonna get that one.
In case you missed it, a couple more here. TIA. You're asking a question to maybe a group and you want an answer, and that one's like
Wow.
thank you, thanks in advance.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to really learn this whole new language, aren't I?
Yes. That was a big one on social media in groups. You know, you ask some questions to the
TIA.
group. and,
Okay.
Yeah, thanks in advance, and then you get all sorts of responses. So, and here's a new one with the young ones. FRFR.
For real? I don't
For
know.
real. Yeah. You got one. See, for real. And I think your
For real,
last
for
one
real?
here. Yep. IDC.
Oh,
Real.
IDC.
Yeah. That's being real ambivalent.
I don't care.
I don't care. Yep.
Wow, I'm gonna really have to do that one with her.
And here's your last one. I know you can do this one. STFU.
Oh yeah.
You can clean it
Shut the front up.
Yeah, shut the front up. Shut the front up. Yes, TSMCA, Texas Social Media Conversation abbreviations. I think you got more right than you got wrong. Whether or not it was with a little help, but we'll call you
All I do is win,
the
no
winner.
matter what. Got money on my mind, I can never get enough. And every time I step up in the building, everybody hands go up.
And they stay
Yeah,
there.
see, now you know all these abbreviations you can share with your daughter and all the youngins out there.
And yeah, but you said, well, you're a professor, so don't. I'm like, no, they're required to write in APA format.
Yes. None of those text abbreviations in their submitting papers, right?
Yeah. There's
No,
no
not at all.
shortcuts.
All right, Chief. Hey, I appreciate you. How about a few words for the audience before I get you out of here?
I just want to thank you so much. I think what you do is just so super cool. And the fact that you reached back out to have me, I just feel very blessed. I enjoy everything that I absolutely do. I believe in our profession. I know we say it's noble. It's just more such it's heart work. And if we could find a space every day to find the positivity and gratitude in our moments, then it might make it just a little bit easier when you go out and have to face the harshness of the day, because within the harshness, there are these beautiful, beautiful, beautiful bright spots. So look for those. Don't just go into the day looking for all the horrible things that are going to happen, because that's all we've been listening to. Find those bright spots, find that positivity and gratitude, and know that the service that you're providing is needed, and we need you. And I just want to thank everybody that's still out there wearing the uniform, going to work every day, and then all of those who continue to pour into the profession. Thank you.
Indeed. Amen. All right, Chief. Hey, I appreciate you. You go about your day and have a great one and a great rest of your week. And hey,
You
we'll talk
too.
soon. Yeah, we'll talk soon. I
Absolutely.
appreciate
Stay
you.
safe. Stay
Thank
safe.
you. Talk soon.
Okay.
All right, y'all. What you think? Fire, right? It's what we do here on the Black and Blue Podcast. Let me thank retired CHP Assistant Chief Jonni Redick for showing up and showing out on this episode. It was truly a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope we can do it again. If you guys enjoyed that conversation as much as I did, let me know by sounding off in the comment section. And be sure to like, subscribe, and share the episode too. I'll be back before you know it with another dope episode just like this one. But till then, Y'all already know. Stay black in blue. I'll holler at you. Peace.
This has been a Maitre D Entertainment presentation.